Hey everyone, John Michael here. Welcome to the third episode of our 4-part quest for the Lake Worth Monster miniseries. In this episode, I talk with Craig Woolheater from the Texas Bigfoot Research Center and CryptoMundo.com about how the Lake Worth Monster helped inspire his lifelong love of cryptozoology. Not only a fan of monsters, Craig is also a huge fan of water conservation and stewardship, so we talk a lot about that. Let's get into it.
Yes, I'm Craig Woolheater of the Texas Bigfoot Research Center and CryptoMundo.com, and I'm here with John Michael at the Fort Worth Nature Center and Refuge here in the office.
Yeah, and we're here to talk about the Lake Worth Monster.
Oh yeah, the Lake Worth Monster.
So, I've got a few questions here.
Certainly.
So did you live in this area in 1969 when the sightings happened?
Well,
Or are you from here?
I lived in the Dallas area, but my grandparents lived here in Fort Worth.
Oh, okay.
And they had a cabin cruiser boat out the marina at Eagle Mountain Lake. So we were out this way quite a bit.
Yeah. And we were talking a little bit before, and you said you would go out on that boat and go near Greer Island and sort of get a little bit spooked that the Lake Worth Monster went.
We would go out, especially in the summertime. We would go out, out to the lake and stay on the boat, all weekend and
cool.
just sleep out on the boat and anchor out in
that's
the lake
awesome.
and go swimming and such. And once I became aware of the Lake Worth Monster, which was just a dam away from us, from Eagle Mountain Lake, it certainly crept into my my subconscious there that the Lake Worth Monster was going to come visit us one night.
That's really cool, staying out on the boat, sleeping out there. I bet that was fun.
Oh, that was really cool.
During the second sighting of the creature, he appeared in front of a few dozen people at a spot that was known for trash dumping at the time and threw a car tire 500 feet, reportedly. Do you think this was because he was angry that people were polluting his lake? Or do you have another opinion?
Well, I don't know. I certainly don't know what he was thinking or what. But, the Lake Worth Monster is generally considered the most witnessed local creature, all across the United States. Here in Texas, too, there's, small rural communities that may have a local monster that is usually named after their body of water, the Lake Worth Monster, the Turkey Creek Monster, the Chambers Creek Monster.
Oh, okay.
And so, they're usually seen around, creeks, rivers, streams, lakes, bodies of water. And during the summer of 1969, the Lake Worth Monster was witnessed by hundreds of people. Mm-hmm. It became a thing, Greer Island and that area out here back then was not part of a park or nature preserve. It was more like a lover's lane area where the teenagers would come. And,
that's what it sounded like from the book.
And hang out and, I guess make out, drink beer. And, one of the first incidents was a car that got jumped on that had a couple in it that were, out here doing what teenagers did out here at Lover's Lane. And so they, were frightened. The thing had jumped on their car and tried to reach in and grab the girl in the car. And so they took off and went and reported it to police. And, there were, actually law enforcement officers that were out here that had actually seen it. And they really came out because then it became a big deal with, throngs of people coming out here with guns and such to want to shoot the monster. And that night there at the pit, there were quite a few people that witnessed it running around up on the rim, the cliff-like structure there, running back and forth. And supposedly it did, it grabbed a tire that was mounted on a wheel and launched it in the air, over the people that were there. It made the front page of the Star-Telegram with a photo of the, there at the area where it was supposedly stood and the path of the wheel as it, traveled through the air. That was in the Star-Telegram on July 11th, 69. And so, as far as one of these localized creatures goes, it was seen by hundreds of people.
Yeah.
And while there's, explanations that people said that, that it was, some high school kids that had a gorilla suit or it was even claimed by some zoologists that it was just a bobcat that leapt out of a tree at someone. But, can't explain away the photograph that Alan Plaster got that, shows an upright being, in a grassy area that, looks like it could have been a Bigfoot type creature. I mean, it was called the Goat Man by locals. Some people claim that they saw horns and such and that it was scaly. And, my thoughts are that it was possibly, a Bigfoot type creature that was passing through the area, stopped off here for a while. It was reported to eat fish and perhaps it, ate some fish and the scales were stuck to it it may have looked scaly.
Yeah.
But, that's just, my opinion. I never saw it myself.
Yeah. That was one of my questions was about the bobcat because it came up over and over again in Sally Ann Clark's book that that people were attributing it to like a bobcat or something, and I think some of the officers were telling people it was a bobcat, and I was wondering if you gave any credence to that theory.
I mean, certainly, I'm sure there's bobcats out here today. I mean, and somebody may have seen one, but it doesn't explain what people claiming they saw something that was 7 foot tall on 2 legs.
Sure.
Covered with hair. It doesn't explain that away.
Yeah. White hair, right?
Yeah. I mean, it was reported to be white in color.
Yeah. So we mentioned Sally Ann Clark's book, The Lake Worth Monster. I think the full title is The Lake Worth Monster of Fort Worth.
Of Greer Island.
Of Greer Island. Okay.
Fort Worth, Texas.
Gotcha. Right. Did you ever meet Sally Ann Clark?
I first met Sally in 1999. I purchased a copy of her book when I was 9 years old in 1969.
Yeah.
But I never really thought about it. It actually, in the book, listed her address and phone number in the front of the book. It's kind of crazy thinking about it now. But, even in the newspaper articles in there, when they talk to people, they listed their address, their home address, and it's like, boy, we weren't really worried about privacy back in '69. But so looked her up and talked to her on the phone.
Oh, wow.
She invited me to come out to her house, and
that's crazy.
Went out and she drug out all her suitcases of artifacts and spent all day out there looking at her stuff and talking to her.
Oh, neat.
And actually in about, I think it may have been in about 2002 or 3, actually went out to her house with a group of about 20 people in the Bigfoot group, and went out and, just listened to stories and, and then we actually drove out here with Sally and came out here and went out to the pit and walked out to Greer Island with Sally Ann Clark, like I said, in about 2002 or 3.
Oh, neat. Because so the sightings happened in 1969, and her book came out in 1969, and so she turned that around pretty quick.
She did turn it around pretty quick. It came out in August. She self-published it. Yeah. It came out in August of '69 and included photocopies of the Fort Worth Star-Telegram from July 10th and July 11th, '69. So I mean, she turned it around, and
she really did
in 4 to 6 weeks or so that she had it out.
And she was out there talking to a lot of people too.
She was. She actually had one of the magnets stuck to her car, the Lake Worth Monster lady, and drove around and spent a lot of time out here, talking to people and interviewing them, and she claimed to have actually had a couple of sightings out here. When she was driving around talking to people.
Yeah. Do you know what she did for a living? Because the whole time I was wondering if she.
I really don't know what she actually did for a living.
I was just curious.
But she became a self-proclaimed monster hunter.
Yeah. Well, that's pretty cool. You mentioned to me before that you're very interested in water conservation.
Yes,
Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Well, Our family business was the plumbing business. My great grandfather started his plumbing company here in Fort Worth in 1912, and while he passed away when I was 3 years old. By the time I was 16, after he passed away, my grandfather was running the business, and I worked the summer I was 16 as a plumber's helper, and decided I did not want to be a plumber, but I had been interested in the business, and my two younger brothers are both plumbers, and so we had, after the family business was sold, my other brothers started their own plumbing companies, and so I worked with them, and then took over what was then the family business in 2008, and focused on green plumbing, which, as you know, is conserving water, and by conserving water, you also conserve energy. I focused on water conservation as opposed to just chasing, stopped up drains and dripping faucets. Although dripping faucets are a big part of water conservation.
Oh, absolutely.
But that was my focus. And in 2011, myself and my company, we were the Green Plumber of the Year through Green Plumbers USA.
Oh, great.
And we focused a lot on we focused a lot on going in and redoing plumbing. We did a lot of work for existing Habitat for Humanity homes, where the homes are built, basically using the cheapest contractor fixtures.
Sure.
But we would go back in and swap out the fixtures for water conserving fixtures. We did a lot of work through Encore's program to doing solar water heaters.
Neat.
Where we would go in and put in a brand new tank water heater, and then add a supplemental solar water heating system there. And so we did a lot of those for the Habitat homes. We did for a building developer out in Dallas called Builders of Hope, where they built homes for low-income families, similar to Habitat for Humanity.
Yeah.
And we would spec those. We would do all the plumbing for them and spec water-conserving fixtures. So I am still involved with that today through a company called Niagara Conservation that has moved their operations from New Jersey here to the Dallas-Fort Worth area up in Flower Mound. And we there's a division of that called Sustainability Solutions, where you go in and for universities and hotels, motels, apartment complexes built pre-1994, when before 1994 the toilets were 3.5 gallons per flush or greater, and go in and replace all the fixtures. And the biggest water savings on that would be the Niagara Stealth toilet that we would put in, which uses 0.8 gallons a flush versus 3.5.
Yeah.
And what happened in 1994 when they mandated the EPA mandated 1.6 gallon per flush toilets, the manufacturers didn't do their homework. They just put a smaller tank on the existing toilets. And so that's why everybody said, oh, well, it's not saving any water if I have to flush it 2 or 3 times. And so Niagara, re-engineered the trapway and really came up with a really cool toilet that will flush pretty much anything on 0.8 gallons. So that's, over a 3.5 gallon toilet, I think that's 77% water savings.
Yeah, no kidding.
So you've got, apartment complexes and universities and such where we've gone in and spec'd these water saving fixtures, and they may be saving, anywhere from 50 to 75% water savings annually. And that's incredible, because as I'm sure you know, we're not making any new water.
That's right.
We've got the same water we've always had. It just has to be cleaned, treated, and reused again.
Absolutely.
And, you know, water's relatively cheap, is, I think, one of the biggest problems. If people, you know, were paying a gallon like they do gas or milk or something, they might be a little more conservative with their use.
Yeah.
But, you know,
Pretty quick.
here in DFW, we're big water wasters compared to, you know, San Antonio and Austin. You know, we use, you know, on average, I think like 3 times as much water per person because we just have, you know, fairly readable water supply.
Sure.
But, you know, what we do here, it seems like, instead of trying to really be conservative with our water use, is, you know, we'll go dam up a river and create a reservoir and pipe more water in.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that's a sensitive subject with you, and I'm sure the Fort Worth Water Department, you know, you know, the more water that is sold, the more money that the city makes. But you know, there's more and more and more people. The population is growing steadily, and you know, we have the same amount of water, but to be used by more and more people. And you know, the water treatment process is not cheap. I mean, you know, for all that water to be treated, and like I said, if you can stretch the water thinner, you know, you can save energy costs as well as water costs.
Yeah, it's an interesting situation we're put in where we're always always encouraging people to conserve water, but it's a you know, it's what we're selling, and it's what lets us run and clean the water that we have. So it is an interesting situation.
Yeah, it is. You know, it's kind of it's a vicious circle, catch-22 that, you know, but you know, at some point it's going to tip over the, you know, and there's plenty of places in the world. We're real lucky, you know, with the water we have. There's so many places in the world where, you know, people don't have access to clean drinking water. You know, in third world countries, you know, people may, you know, walk all day to go load a jug of water and carry it back on their head to their village, you know, because they don't have access. They can't just turn on a faucet and have clean water. And
it's hard to imagine what that's like unless you've experienced it.
Sure, it is. You know, because, you know, people don't think about it. They just go to their kitchen faucet and turn it on, and there's water. They don't think about the process of what it takes to get that water to them.
So why do you think that keeping our water clean and conserving our water is important for areas like Lake Worth, where there might be cryptids, monsters living?
You know, all life, you know, basically needs 3 things. It four when you count air to breathe, but you know, a food source, a water source, and cover. And especially out here, you know, all of those are in abundance. You know, you can drive. We didn't see any when we were driving in today, but I've been out here and seen tons of deer out here, even during the day. Not at dusk or dawn, but, you know, in the middle of the day, plenty of deer foraging around. So, you know, here there's, you know, plenty of water, plenty of food source, and plenty of cover. I mean, this place is really thick with trees. But like I said, you know, for life to sustain itself, you need, you know, as humans especially, we need clean drinking water to survive.
Do you remember what first got you interested in cryptozoology? Was it the Lake Worth monster?
The Lake Worth monster is what really got me thinking about it. As a kid, I was into, you know, ghosts and UFOs and monsters and dinosaurs and stuff. But you know, when I saw the front page paper of the Star Telegram that had, you know, about a fishy man goat or whatever that was seen out here at Lake Worth, and, you know, I wasn't that far away. It was something that really, you know, really interested me. And then I found, you know, the book by Sally Ann Clark, and found another book by an author, John Keel, that was called Strange Creatures from Time and Space. That came out in 1970, and I traded a kid at school for that book that had some really cool artwork and just told about creatures all over the world. And one of the chapters was devoted to the Mothman of Point Pleasant, West Virginia. He also wrote that book, The Mothman Prophecies, a couple years later, that became a movie starring Richard Gere. And then a couple years after that, I saw the movie The Legend of Boggy Creek, again about a creature, a Bigfoot-type creature that was seen near Texarkana that, again, wasn't but 3 hours from where I lived, and was described as some type of upright, hair-covered monster of some sort. So, that really got me focused, interested in the subject of Bigfoot and cryptozoology, which is the study of hidden or unknown animals. And I was interested, in my teen years of Boy Scout and camping out, and always thinking in the back of your head, are there any strange creatures out here or whatever? But, after my teen years, it kind of slipped from my my thoughts until 1994 on May 30th of 1994, Memorial Day 1994. I had gone with my youngest brother and some friends and such, taking a road trip to New Orleans for the holiday weekend. And this is before GPS and before Google Maps, MapQuest, any of that stuff. So we just took out a road atlas and plotted our course, what looked like the quickest way there. And through a lot of Louisiana, we picked Highway 71, which turned out to be just a 2-lane state highway out there in the middle of nowhere through a bulk of through Louisiana. And so that's the way we went. And when we left at 5:30 or so from Dallas Friday morning, by the time we got there, it was mid-morning and, just looked like a regular road. Well, on the way back on Monday, Memorial Day, we had come in 5 different cars. It was 12 people, and my car was the last one to leave, myself and my girlfriend at the time and a neighbor that was in the back seat. And once we headed up Highway 71, now at 10 o'clock at night, 10:30, it was just an unlit road out in the middle of nowhere, and no traffic or anything coming. And so we were driving up this road. My friend was actually asleep in the back seat, and I had a little soft top SUV and had the top rolled up because it was really nice outside. And as we're driving on the left side of the road, it was kind of swampy out there, and on the right side there was a tree line about 30 feet or so out from the edge of the road. And in my headlights, we caught a figure off to the right of the road, about halfway between the edge of the road and the tree line. And it looked rather large. And as we approached in my headlights, we saw that it was actually an animate object that was on 2 legs, walking, covered with hair. It looked to be gray in the illumination of my headlights, and it was walking parallel to the road. It was about 7 foot tall, and it wasn't a burned out tree stump. It wasn't a bear walking on 2 legs. It wasn't somebody in a costume. It was what I can only describe as one of these creatures. It was walking with its back to us, parallel to the road. So as we passed it, my wife, well, she became my wife later, but she was my girlfriend, had a really good look because it was on her side of the car. And as we passed it, we looked at each other and simultaneously said, "Did you just see what I just saw?" And we agreed that we had. And I said, "Well, what do you think you saw?" And she goes, "I think I saw a Bigfoot." And I was like, "Well, we've got to stop." And she, uttered a few curse words and stated that we were not stopping. So we didn't stop.
I don't blame her.
I don't know what I would have done, but I wanted to get a better
Sure.
look at it. So about that time, as we're discussing not stopping, we start entering a small town called Boggy, Louisiana, and now it's about 11:30 at night on Monday night, Memorial Day, and there is nothing going on in town. I mean, the sidewalks are rolled up, and
Yeah.
and everybody's in bed, from what I can tell. And so we drove through town, and pulling out of town, we saw a little white church off to the right with an asphalt parking lot and a light pole out in the middle. And so we pulled in to the parking lot and talked about and stopped for, it was maybe 10 or 15 minutes just to talk about what we had seen, what we thought. And our friend was still asleep in the back seat. She never woke up. So we talked about it for a while, and then, it was time to get back on the road, to get back to Dallas. We still had, over 5.5 hours to get to Dallas,
Yeah.
and it was, about midnight. So we got back on the road, and we may have talked about it, but I don't really even remember talking about it, once we got back on the road.
Yeah.
And I don't really remember talking about it, when we got home.
Yeah.
Didn't say, hey, we saw him,
Yeah.
a Bigfoot or whatever on the side of the road. But like I said, this was in May of '94. And, but when I first got on the internet, and that's going to sound strange to somebody as young as yourself, but
I'm not that young.
but when you tell kids, I was 37 years old before I had internet access,
Yeah.
and they just, it's mind blowing, but that's the truth. In the summer of 1997, when I first, got internet access, one of the first things I looked up was, Bigfoot, and found that there were people in this area, that were reporting sightings. Like I said, I hadn't really kept up on it. And, the
People in that area where you.
yes,
where you saw that?
I'm in the 4-state region of Texas,
okay.
Oklahoma,
Gotcha.
Arkansas, and Louisiana. It was, really thought to be, a Pacific Northwest experience. I thought,
Yeah.
when you'd see a documentary or something back in those days, it'd be about the Yeti over in the Himalayas, or Sasquatch, Bigfoot up in the Pacific Northwest. I wasn't really aware that there were tons of sightings out this way. It really wasn't associated with Bigfoot, back in the day, because, Bigfoot, that word wasn't even really coined until 1958. And, the Patterson-Gimlin film came out in 1967, in there's sightings dating back, hundreds of years in these areas where, maybe Native American legends and folklore to, newspaper reports from the 1800s, generally termed wild men. They were just the wild man of the woods.
Yeah.
But as it turns out, I think it's, it's the same thing, that these whatever you want to call them, creatures, beings, animals, are being seen, all over the place, and not generally reported. Back in the 70s, it was pretty popular, and the newspapers would report sightings, in East Texas, or, all over, and it wasn't really called Bigfoot. It was the wild men. So, and people say, well, why, if these things are really out there, why aren't people seeing them? Well, people are seeing them. I figure that probably 10% or less of actual encounters are actually reported to anybody. I mean, I've talked to people that have lived in small rural communities and said, we've seen them out here, and, people, know about them, and it's more like, if we don't bother them, they won't bother us, kind of a deal.
Yeah.
And like I said, Native Americans have legends and folklore going back centuries that they, the Stick Indians, or, just another tribe of Indians that lived in the woods that were covered with hair and were giants. But, I think these things are out there. I've talked, since 1999, I've talked to hundreds of people that have claimed that they've seen one or more of these creatures, or found tracks, or heard unexplained noises out in the woods or around lakes or whatever. And there's only a couple possibilities that I think, if somebody says that they saw these. I mean, they could be lying about it. They could just be making it up.
Sure.
Somebody could have hoaxed them and they didn't know about it. I mean, there's been, people that have hoaxed. There was one a couple years ago in Montana with a guy that was wearing a suit of some sort and, jumping out in front of cars on the highway. And he actually got hit and killed by, hoaxing Bigfoot sightings.
Yikes.
So,
don't try that.
I guess they could possibly be under the influence of, alcohol or narcotics. They could be mistaking known wildlife or humans, and the only other possibility I have beyond that is that, they may have seen what they say they saw.
Sure.
And, if even one of those people is telling the truth and relating a real encounter, then there's something out there that should be looked into. And, even if I discount every story I've ever been told, every person I've ever talked to, I still have my own experience that I can't explain away, that I saw a large hair-covered being walking on two legs at 11:30 at night.
Yeah. Oh, can you tell us a little bit about Cryptomundo and the Texas Bigfoot Research Center?
Well, the Texas Bigfoot Research Center was formed in June of 1999. So we're actually in a couple months coming up on the 20th anniversary of this. And it was just myself and another gentleman that I met on the internet, back in 1997, the late 90s. The internet was much less than it is now. It was mainly message boards and forums and such, but it found people, that had a common interest that, what I was in. And I wasn't an outdoorsman of any, like I said, I was a Boy Scout in my teens, but I didn't go hunting or, fished very rarely. But I wanted to try and find answers to what I had seen and what other people were seeing. So he and I formed the organization and put up a website and started receiving, sighting reports from people and people wanting to get involved. So people joined up with what we were doing, and we started investigating reports and going out into areas where, reported sightings had been, and talking to witnesses, preferably if we could on site where it happened, just to take a look at a lay of the land and see if it was possible that, that there could be a creature that was out there. And so we just started doing that. And like I said, talked to a lot of people. I decided in about 2000 to, after attending the Ohio Bigfoot Conference in 2000, April of 2000, and then again in 2001, I thought, there's not anything like this in Texas. I bet I could do something like this. And so we started making plans to host the first Texas Bigfoot Conference, and we picked Jefferson because it had a history of sightings out that way. It's right there near Caddo Lake. It's only an hour away or so from Fouke, Arkansas, where the Fouke monster was. And my folks owned a bed and breakfast there in town.
Oh, okay.
And my mom was actually on the events committee for the Bed and Breakfast Association. So I was like, well, I've got resources here. So I used those resources, and we planned the first conference there in Jefferson. Unfortunately, it was planned for September 15th, 2001, which was 4 days after 9/11.
Yeah.
So we had, people that couldn't fly in, guest speakers that were coming in. But one of our keynote speaker actually resided on Vancouver Island and did not fly. So he actually drove from Vancouver Island all the way to Jefferson, Texas. It took about a month, he and his wife. And they stopped and visited people that had reported Bigfoot sightings on the
Yeah.
way.
Oh, cool.
So we had the conference, and we had about 150 people that showed up. And so we just started. I started planning that an annual event, and we were contacted by a couple of museums along the way. In 2004, we were contacted by the Brazos County Museum of Natural History there in Bryan College Station, and they wanted to put together a Bigfoot exhibit, and so we helped them with that. And then that was there in 2004, I believe. In 2005, was contacted by the University of Texas San Antonio, that we were contacted by them. They were wanting to plan a Bigfoot in Texas museum exhibit.
Oh, cool.
One of their campuses there in San Antonio is a museum, the Institute of Texan Cultures, and it was built for the 1968 World's Fair, and they wanted to have a Bigfoot exhibit. And so we started planning that in 2005, co-curating that, and in April of 2006, the opening of Bigfoot in Texas museum exhibit. It was a 2,000 square foot museum exhibit of Bigfoot artifacts and eyewitness accounts and such, footprint casts.
Oh, cool.
And it was very popular that summer. Ran for 6 months, and we did 4 half-day conferences where we brought in Bigfoot and Sasquatch and Yeti luminaries from around the country that came in and spoke, and it was very popular. We had Peter Byrne, who has been involved in this. He led the Yeti expeditions in the Himalayas in the 50s.
Oh, wow.
And he was financed by an oil man here in Texas named Tom Slick. And
That's a good name for an oil man.
yeah, not the cartoon character who raced cars, but he financed the Yeti expeditions there.
Wow.
And Peter Byrne led those, and he also had set up in the late 50s, set up expeditions in Northern California when reports were coming out of there of America's abominable snowman.
Yeah.
And he brought Peter Byrne over here to lead those expeditions and such. And in the grand opening of that exhibit in 2006, we had Peter Byrne in, and we also had Tom Slick's niece. Now, Tom Slick died in a mysterious. He also owned an airline, Slick Airlines. He died in a mysterious plane crash in 1962 at only 46 years of age. But his niece had written a biography about Tom Slick, and so we had a book signing with her and Peter Byrne and everything. So it was really cool to tie in the San Antonio culture there in San Antonio at the museum, the history of Bigfoot and Yeti research.
Yeah.
So that year we didn't have a conference in Jefferson because we had focused so much on this all summer long. I didn't have time to properly plan an event. But then we had the event again in Jefferson in 2007 and 2008. And actually in 2007, we had, I can't remember if he's at the time, if he was a senator or a U.S. representative, but Louis Gohmert came out there. At the time, he was in charge of the Department of the Interior, and came out. One of our benefactors that sponsors the event was sponsoring a dinner for him and brought him by the conference. And we got to talk to him for about 30 or 45 minutes, and he seemed very interested in what we were doing, because one of the aspects of what we were doing was also trying conservation measures to not actually to try and conserve the creatures themselves, but to conserve the nature, the surroundings, for animals to survive. And so they were interested in that, and then we had cities out in East Texas start courting us to because the event grew really popular. In 2005, the 2005 conference, we had in the October 2005 issue of Texas Monthly, we had a Bigfoot cover story in Texas Monthly, 7 pages. In Texas Highways that month, we had a 2-page spread. Our conference was covered by USA Today.
Oh, wow.
And we were a crawler on CNN. Bigfoot
Oh,
conference
no way.
in Texas draws hundreds. So we were awarded the key to the city in Jefferson.
Cool.
And they proclaimed the third weekend in October in Jefferson as officially Texas Bigfoot Weekend.
Oh, cool.
So that happened, and in 09 and 10 and 11, the event was moved to Tyler, and stayed about as popular as it was. I was no longer with the original organization at that time. I'd resigned to focus on other things, my business and such, water conservation.
Yeah.
And in 2013, the organization held it in Fort Worth at Tarrant County, one of the rooms at Tarrant County Convention Center.
Oh, cool.
And they decided not to hold the event anymore. So in 2014, I brought it back as originally in Jefferson, organized by myself and the Texas Bigfoot Research Center. And we've held it there in 2014 since. And actually last year, in February of 2018, speaking of town proclamations, the mayor of Jefferson, Texas, last year signed a town proclamation that Jefferson was officially the Bigfoot capital of Texas. So there's that now, and they've one of the people at the Chamber of Commerce procured a Bigfoot statue that they have there in town, and so it's become really popular. The town has really supported it.
Yeah.
And so, we're doing it again this year, October 18th and 19th. We've got Cliff Barrickman and Bobo from Finding Bigfoot are both going to be there speaking, as well as some of the other Texas guys, cryptozoologists, Bigfoot hunters, and such. So we've got that event coming up, and actually we've organized in June 15th, the Falk Monster Festival there in Falk, Arkansas. That we're going to have a lot of the actual actors that were in the original film are going to be there, and the original film from '72 has been restored and remastered, and it will be premiering in Texarkana at the Perot Theater, which is the original theater. Wasn't called the Perot then, but the original theater where it originally screened in 1972.
What's the title of the movie?
The Legend of Boggy Creek.
Okay.
The Legend of Boggy Creek.
Okay.
And so those are coming up. And then, as you know, in the last weekend, I think it's October 26th of this year, we've got the 50th anniversary Lake Worth Monster Bash coming up that will be out here at the Fort Worth Nature Center and Refuge. That it's a really popular event. It's family friendly, lots of family activities and such. Canoe rentals to canoe out on Lake Worth, and hay rides, and there'll be people here speaking specifically about the Lake Worth monster. And that summer of '69, and hopefully the Fort Worth Water Department will be out here.
Oh, absolutely.
Hopefully they'll be out here and promoting water conservation and what people can do to try and not pollute the water sources and conserve water. And so it'll be a lot of fun for not only fans of the Lake Worth Monster, but families in general.
Oh yeah, we'll absolutely be here. We're gonna have, I think we're gonna have 2 tables, a conservation table, and then another table where I'm gonna.
The Grease people, they usually come out to these kind of things.
Yeah,
or the water conservation things.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Because that's a big deal too.
Oh yeah. Cease the grease. And I think Michelle's going to let me set up another table where I was going to set up this equipment and record people's stories and talk to people about it.
There's people that'll be out here, probably that were out here in '69.
Yeah.
That, I've talked to some of these people. And speaking of that, we've received reports. I think the last report I can remember of something here locally in the area that somebody saw something that appeared to be a Bigfoot was in 2008. So, there's been sporadic reports over the years. I think possibly again the tagline in the Legend of Boggy Creek is he always travels the creeks. Eagle Mountain Lake and Lake Worth were created by damming a river, and I believe that could be a travel corridor still, that these things could traveling through. I don't think there's anything out here that has taken up permanent residence, and I really don't think that even the Lake Worth monster was a permanent resident of Lake Worth. It seemed like July and August of '69 was the time that the bulk of the reports happened back then.
So this is a question I ask everybody, but if you had to pick one movie to live inside of, what would that movie be and why?
One movie to live inside of?
Can I take a guess?
Not necessarily. You're probably going to say The Legend of Boggy Creek.
I was going to say Harry and the Hendersons.
Harry and the Hendersons is a cool movie.
I need to see The Legend of Boggy Creek. I haven't seen it.
Well, like I said, come out to Texarkana that weekend, June 14th and 15th. We're going to have the festival in Falk, which is about 20 minutes from Texarkana, between 10 and 3 on that Saturday. And there's screenings Saturday and Sunday. It's about 3 hours from Fort Worth, but the event will be going on, and the screening of the movie will be taking place all that weekend. There's, I think, like 8 or 10 screenings at that theater that weekend, so you can see it restored on the big screen.
Oh, cool.
As it should be seen.
Yeah. So would that be your answer, The Legend of Boggy Creek?
Well, does it have to be a monster movie?
No, it can be whatever movie you want.
Speaking of Harry and the Hendersons, that's very cool at the end. If you remember, when they take Harry back out to the woods, and he walks off there, and then out of nowhere, there's all kinds of them that just kind of come out of nowhere.
Yeah. I forgot
from
about
behind
that.
the trees, and such. Actually, what movie would I be in? That's kind of a tough question.
It is tough.
My favorite movie, I did just get to go see it on the big screen a week and a half ago, which is The Shawshank Redemption.
Oh, that's a great movie.
And I don't know that I want to be in that movie because they're in prison. That didn't. But it is such a great movie. I mean, who would think that a movie about life in prison would be that great? But
it really is good.
To me, it has the greatest ending to a movie ever.
Yeah.
I mean, it's narrated by Morgan Freeman. I mean, you can't ask for anything better than that. And at the end, when they, he's walking on the beach and Andy's there working on his boat.
Yeah.
It's such a great ending, they don't even have to show it. I mean, it just shows him walking up, and then it just fades out.
Yeah.
I mean, it's so great because they finally reunited after all these years.
So maybe you'd live in that ending.
Yeah, the ending on the beach. I wouldn't mind hanging out on the beach there and watch them walking up.
Yeah.
But that is such a great movie. Raising Arizona is another great movie.
Yeah, that is
Would have been cool to be in that movie. Monty Python and the Holy Grail, another cool movie. I could have been one of the coconut cloppers for the horses.
Yeah.
I wouldn't want to have been the Black Knight.
No.
It's merely a flesh wound. But I don't know that really any of my favorite movies I would want to be in them.
Yeah.
Harry and the Hendersons would be cool.
Yeah.
But like my favorite Bigfoot movie is Exists, which was
Exist?
produced and directed by Eduardo Sanchez, who did the Blair Witch Project.
Oh.
And so that was a movie he released in 2014 that came out, and it's really scary.
Yeah.
And probably more realistic, what would actually happen. The year before that, Bobcat Goldthwait put out a Bigfoot movie called Willow Creek that started out as kind of a documentary there in Willow Creek, California, which was, about an hour from Bluff Creek where the Patterson-Gimlin film was shot. But it was a guy that was a filmmaker that was making a documentary about Bigfoot, and a really creepy movie. And it doesn't even show Bigfoot in the movie, but it's really creepy. Those are probably
I've never heard of
my 1 and 2 of Bigfoot movies is Exists, and then Willow Creek, and then probably Legend of Boggy Creek. But you should check those out.
Oh, absolutely.
And you could have a little Bigfoot movie podcast where we're talking about Bigfoot movies.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, I think
Have you
that's all the
gone out?
questions I have.
When you came out here before, did you go out to the pit?
Yeah,
and to
Michelle
Greer
took me
Island?
out to the gravel
Did
pit,
you walk
and
out to Greer Island?
we walked about halfway across the levee. Yeah, it's really cool, and you can see how, it feels. So I mean, we're not that far from downtown Fort Worth,
yeah.
but it feels like you're really like out in the middle of nowhere,
Mhm.
and it's pretty crazy. Yeah.
Yeah, to think that it's been 50 years now.
Yeah,
but, and a lot has changed. But out here, on the the nature preserve out here, it's a lot like it used to be. It was open to the public then. It wasn't a gated park, but
Yeah.
the lake and the woods and such. But it's a really cool area.
Yeah.
It's really cool to come out here and just think about what was, and how it was, really formative to me in my
Yeah.
young years and such about this
Yeah.
place. And it's just a cool place to come out. Like I said, even now, just to come out and be in such a wild place,
Yeah.
so close to downtown Fort Worth.
Yeah. With bison. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. That's crazy.
The bison.
Well, thank you very much for doing this.
Sure,
It's
not a
great to
problem.
meet you and great talking to you about
Okay.
this. And yeah.
Thank you, sir.
A huge thanks to Craig Wooleder for taking the time to meet me at the Nature Center and talk about monsters. Check out the Texas Bigfoot Research Center's Facebook page. It's a really fun page with lots of friendly and welcoming people, and it's a great place to find out about upcoming Bigfoot events like the 2019 Texas Bigfoot Conference on October 18th and 19th in Jefferson, Texas. Also, thanks to everyone for listening, subscribing, and helping us spread the word. Right now, we have 13 5-star reviews, so thanks so much to everyone who has taken the time to forget their iTunes password, try to reset it to the password that you used to use for everything, get locked out, eventually reset it after several more attempts, and then finally log in and leave a review. Here are a few of the latest reviews. LoseMa524 says, delightful and informative. The host of this podcast has managed to make learning about water and your community fun. His creative approach to exploring water's role in our everyday lives is straight up beautiful. He's funny and has the best radio voice ever. I look forward to every single new episode. Wow. LoseMa24, you are too kind, and I didn't even bribe you to say this stuff. I have to disagree with you about my radio voice, though. I think I have a face for radio and a voice for being quiet and not saying anything. I think I like the episodes where I have laryngitis the best. Blanco Ben says, fabulously interesting. John Michael curates informative and interesting material on this podcast all about water. It's great fun to feel better connected to the community through the universally fascinating topic of water. Thank you so much, Blanco Ben. I think a long time ago I offered to make fun of your username if you left a 5-star review, but I can't think of anything mean to say about all you nice people who are saying all these wonderful things, so thank you very much. Shortsy Shot says, yes, water conservation. This is a fun and informative podcast. Delightful hosts. Highly recommend. Thank you, Shortsy Shot. Yes, Queen. Do kids still say that? I'm still cool, right? I'm sorry, Miss Jackson says, literally the best. Love it. Thank you so much. I'm sorry, Miss Jackson. Great username, by the way. I am for real. I apologize a trillion times for not reading this sooner. Thanks again to everyone who has left a review or given us a 5-star rating. It really helps us get noticed in the sea of millions of other podcasts about water. Join us next week for the final episode in the quest for the Lake Worth Monster mini-series.